think that some of the reasons of this are internal. The relocation process has created some natural tensions among the Gunas themselves at several levels. There are different criteria among the Guna General Congress, the big decision-making body, and the local congresses regarding how to handle the relocation. There have been some differences among individuals in the Gardi Subdub community itself, differences between people who live in Gardi Subdub and the diaspora in Panama City, and also some tensions with members of other Guna communities who would like to relocate to Gardi Subdub new site. Among the external reasons, there have been unexpected delays on the relocation process, and 4 years have already passed since the first time the community started preparing the relocation site. So some of those reasons are, as I mentioned, changes in the leadership level of Gardi Subdub, delays by the Ministry of Housing regarding the construction of the first 65 houses, and also there have been many false promises or promises that have not yet materialized, which have contributed to creating a lot of frustration and uncertainty about the relocation. So let's check now a little bit about the role of the Panamanian government in the relocation from that Gardi Subdub island. We believe that the Panamanian government has taken a very fragmented approach to relocation in Gunayala and has not developed any coordinated or systematic plan in this regard. Several ministers have developed some very impressive projects in the area of Gardi Subdub, such as building a health center and a school complex, and there is a promise to build a first group of 65 houses. These projects are being implemented on land also provided by the community next to the relocation site or the planned relocation site. As a result, if you go there, it seems that all those activities were part of a coordinated plan by the Panamanian government for a relocation. But unfortunately, the reality is that each intervention has been completely disconnected from one from the next. So let's look at some of those interventions in detail, and a little bit of detail. The health center. So the Panamanian Ministry of Health is currently investing, or in the previous government that ended around the beginning of this year, they invested heavily in health infrastructure all over the countries. One of the health centers that is currently in the process of being built is located in Gardi Subdub with an investment of $11.6 million with funds mainly from a loan from the Inter-American Development Bank. The construction started in October 2011 and officially was planned that they will be finished by June of 2014. However, when we visited the first time in March, at the end of March of this year, this is what we found. So I will say for Latin American standards, this is a kind of very impressive health center. And this is the first type of investment that is made in an indigenous community in Panama. So on September 21st, last time that I was there, this is what I found. So the only difference between the two pictures is that the building was painted a little bit, even finished. Okay, so regarding the school, the projected school complex, the Panamanian government is also in the process of building a very impressive school complex in Gardi Subdub, which includes 41 classrooms, laboratories, a gym, cafeteria, library, and dormitories for 60 students and 16 teachers. And the whole project will benefit around 1,200 students. The total cost of that project is around $10.8 million and is built with funds from a loan from the Inter-American Development Bank. The studies for the construction of the school complex started in 2011, and in theory, it should be ready by October 2014. This is, in our first visit, we went to the site to visit with some members of the community with what is called the neighborhood committee. So this is the place where the the school. And this is a graphic that was provided by the Minister of Education of how it will look like. Probably will not look like this because the terrain is not as flat as this, but this is what they have in mind. This is what we found in our visit last September 31st. So the projected housing project. In 2011, the Neighborhood Committee of Gardi Subdub approached the Ministry of Housing and requested to build some houses for their relocation. The community offered 17 hectares of land that they own for the project. The ministry elaborated a blueprint that they called Nuevo Cartí with the idea of building the first 65 houses. According to the design, each family will have a lot of 450 square meters, and the projected houses would be only 36 square meters, 6 by 6 meters, with cement floors, walls made with bamboo, and roofs covered with zinc. The project have not started. This picture was facilitated by some officials at the Ministry of Housing, and this is a prototype of houses that they have been building in other indigenous communities. So we asked ourselves in the study if like plan or unplanned relocation. We believe that it's everyone's best interest to proceed with the relocation of the Gardisutu community, in addition to all over the other communities in Gunayala that need to be relocated without the urgency of a natural disaster that could put an unnecessary burden on the Guna people as well to the Panamanian state. Should the relocation proceed even in the absence of a plan? We believe that an unplanned relocation should be avoided as much as possible, but not by opposing the relocation of Gardi Subdub, that they have been working on this for more than 4 years, but by actively collaborating with the community in a credible and viable plan. And we still believe, and this is a message that we mentioned throughout the whole report, is that there are a lot of elements that there's still time to make this relocation a very successful one. And this, if is well planned and well done, it could become a model for other relocation processes in Gunayala, in other areas of Panama affected by rising sea levels, and in other places around the world as well. So the other question that we ask is is climate change the only reason to relocate? And we answer ourselves that it appears to us that the lack of space on the islands is what people in Gardisutu see as the most pressing, as it affects their everyday life. The rise of sea levels is an imminent threat that is magnified during few months of the year and throughout the year when there is bad weather. However, it's the combination of factors that make the relocation a necessity: the lack of space and the fact that the ocean level has been increasing there. So we also need to remember, as some authors mentioned, and remind us that the causality behind any migration decision is a very complex one, and there is never a simple stimulus-response process, as authors like Robert McLean mentioned. So some of the conclusions that we have in our report is that we believe that the worst case scenario for the Gardisubdub community and for all the communities in Gunayala is, as we mentioned, that a sudden and forced permanent relocation as a result of a natural disaster. So as a result, there is an urgent need to act before this occurred. And the relocation of Gardisubdub and the entire Gunayala region presents a major challenge in terms of planning, and it should be supported immediately by the Panamanian government, the international financial institutions, and the international community. Approximately 28,000 people will eventually have to move in the next decades from the islands of Gunayala to the mainland. Any relocation project also will need to take into account and make room for a portion of the Guna diaspora that lives outside of Gunayala. This group might decide to go back to their land and could add roughly other 12,000 people. As a result, we are talking probably about 40,000 people who will have to move to a mainland area that is mainly covered by forest. The Gunayala region actually has the most well-preserved forest in Panama. Also, important to keep in mind that the problems with mosquito-related diseases on the mainland, which spurred the Gunas to move to the islands in the first place 100 years ago, are still in existence and cannot be ignored. As a result, the relocation of the Guna people is also a challenge in terms of public health. The Panamanian government should take seriously the possibility that malaria and yellow fever outbreaks occur where the Gardi subdued community is planning to relocate. And this is even more urgent, even if the community still have to wait longer to move there. But when the school complex is finished, around 1,200 Guna students will be studying there. And that presents other type of challenges for the community. No one knows if the community has not been relocated, who will organize all the logistics of moving the students on a daily basis to the mainland and back and forth. So we also believe that the relocation of the Guna people will present challenge in terms of internal negotiations and arrangement amongst the Gunas themselves. As it was mentioned in the case of Gardi Subduk, they make their own arrangements so that some people, some families donated land, but this might not happen in other places. It will be more complicated. So, we believe that if the Guna authorities and institutions are weakened in the years to come, a relocation in Gunayala might not happen in an orderly and successful way, or it might not happen at all. And we believe that if this is the outcome, everyone will lose, not only the Guna people. I think this is what I have to present today, and I would be happy to hear your comments or questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for the talk. It was very interesting. You had a hard act to follow from yesterday. It was a very good lecture, but yours was very, very good. My question is about relocation and integration, which you didn't talk that much about. I was just wondering because, for example, in the Philippines, when they had that big problem with the eruption of the volcano at Pinatubo, and they moved Aita people from there to Aita regions in Bataan, there was a lot of conflicts because even though they're considered to be the same people by the government, they're not considered to be the same people by the people involved. So I suppose the Kunapunans have their clans and whatnot. I really don't know. But is there, obviously the land that they're moving to is occupied by somebody. And particularly if they're moving to areas outside of the Kunapuna areas, like you said, there's a lot of them living in Panama City now, or in that region. Are they, when they lose their autonomy because of moving out of their area, do they tend to integrate into the population, or like on the islands, I guess their language is very important. When they go to the mainland, do they have to learn Spanish? Yes, what is the dynamic there?
Sure. Well, this is, I would say that this is a kind of a very unique case. This is very different from the small island states in the Pacific where people don't have a place to go. So the Gunas, they live mostly in the islands, but they own the whole Gunayala region. So they have land, and the land is in their name. And the land, by the way, is not occupied by anyone. They use the land, actually the Gardi, my first surprise actually when I went there and I heard that you will arrive to the Gardi port, I was expecting a settlement there, even an hotel or something, or some houses. But there is only a restaurant and the port, but no one lives there. So the Gunas use, as I mentioned at the beginning, the land in the coast to have crops, but is mostly covered by forests. So this is one issue. So there will not be an issue of integration in that land because it's not occupied. Yes, there is an issue of integration if the communities have to move to other places in cities like Panama City, but there is also ways of that the Guna has found to integrate. They typically live in like in the case of Panama City, in some neighborhoods. So actually we visited, and I have some pictures of some Gunas in the streets in that neighborhood. We met with this committee of the diaspora in Panama City because they meet every Sunday or every other Sunday. We talked to them, and we found that this community of Gardi Subdub, actually they own a building in Panama City, and it's a kind of an embassy that the authorities use when they have to go to Panama City to do some official trip. So they are very well organized in the city. They keep a lot of ties, but so some authors have worked this issue of integration in Panama City in what I unfortunately didn't have time to go deeper on that issue, but it's an important one.
Could you say again what the level of rise of the water is over the last century and the last decade? And also, are other places in Panama threatened?
Yes, the measure of what Guzman and his team, with this caveat of the typo in the publication, what they found is similar to what has been found in other places. So it's kind of typical, like 2 millimeters most of the last century, and with an acceleration to 3 millimeters every year during the last 30 years, or a couple decades. Yes, another, actually, last 2 weeks ago, I was in Panama releasing the report. We have a version in Spanish and of the report, and we organized a couple public events, and I was expecting some media attention, but I have to say that I was very surprised of all the media attention that our report received in Panama. And in many ways, this is not. We were not telling anyone something totally new. It has been in the news for those who were paying attention. And again, there has been a study published more than 10 years ago, a scientific study that mentioned this, on academic workshops. Even the Gunas have in their statutes, their own laws, they have an article that kind of regulate relocation. So this is a topic that has been an issue at least of conversation. But I think that if there is some, if I would say that if there is a contribution on our report, the main one was like to put together information that was very dispersed and try to organize it in a systematic way. And we found that people were very surprised, like, and talking about media, government officials, the public, environmental NGOs, So they were like, they were never, people have heard for years that Panama will be one of the countries that will be severely affected by climate change, but there has not been enough systematic studies, and it's not really an agency, a state agency, paying enough attention to this. We also have the opportunity to meet with the state institution in charge of prevention, of disaster prevention, and they, despite that they have, Panama has been following kind of all the international guidelines on this topic, they have not implemented any measures in indigenous communities. So they were very surprised to learn that this was going on in Panama. So obviously we were even more surprised because they were in charge of risk reduction and prevention, and nothing has been done so far.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm sorry I came in a little late, so I don't know that you covered this, one of my questions. One is, was this relocation done with the participation of the people concerned? In other words, did the government talk to them and give their consent for the relocation? The second question is about the Peninsula Principles. If you can talk a little bit about the principles themselves and why they were adopted and who adopted them, because they apply in relation to internal displacement, and there is already the very principles on internal displacement. So if you can compare the two and say why these principles are different, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, the issue of relocation, again, what we found is, you go there. This is the Gardis subdub community, is the first community that in Gunayala took the decision of relocating. We didn't have the time or the tools to really dig deeper how that worked internally. This is still, there is still a lot of room for further research, for academic research to go there. I don't know exactly, like, but you find that a community that took this decision. We met with another community that actually decided that they will not relocate for now. I have some picture of that meeting in that community, and actually some of the silos, the local chiefs were a little, I would say, hostile, not very sympathetic with our presentation, because in that island, they, for some reason, they decided that they will not relocate for now. And on the other hand, so this community took the decision. It's not that the government, no one convinced them to relocate. They took the decision of doing this. But at the same time, the government was planning several projects, several interventions in the area. So because of their autonomous status, the government approached to them and said, hey, we want to build a health center here. And they say, oh yeah, we know where that health center can be built. And the same with the school. And they selected the place, the people. So it's a kind of very unique situation, because you find typically it's the opposite. The government decides where to build it. They put the land and they donated the land for that. The same with the school. And so that's why I mentioned before during the presentation that you arrive there and you find 3 interventions, and it seems like there's a plan here for relocating, and there is not. I talked to people from the Inter-American Development Bank in charge of those programs, and they have no clue that the community of Gardisubdo was planning to relocate. And they have the health center and a school complex. So the way, as I think that how those projects are run, really disconnected one from another, and no one was looking at the big picture. And again, I think that by looking at this, the big picture of what is going on in Gardisudub and in the whole Gunayala region is where what you really realize the scale of the problem and the scale of the challenges. Regarding the Peninsula Principles, the Peninsula Principles on climate displacement were drafted by a group of experts in on displacement, some academics, people from the UN agencies. This is a non-binding document that currently is the only instrument or set of principles out there for at least that I am aware of, specifically for climate displaced people, internal displacement caused by climate change. So it was drafted at the end of last year, and the hope is that by the use by affected communities, by advocates of those communities, by governments, little by little, they became like the principles to follow, or that the UN decided to use it as an input for a better instrument. But so far is the only thing that we have, and because Displacement Solution was the organization behind